The gun felt heavier than it should have. Daryl handed it to me, wrapped in an old gym towel, his hands shaking so bad the whole bundle trembled. "Just for a few days," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Please, Danny, I can't keep it at my place anymore." We'd been friends since 3rd grade, 14 years. I trusted him more than my own brother, so when he showed up at my apartment at midnight, rain dripping from his jacket, I didn't ask questions. I just took the gun and shoved it deep in my closet behind winter coats I never wore. That was Monday. Tuesday morning, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The shape of it pressed against my mind like a bruise. During my shift at the warehouse, I kept checking my phone. Daryl hadn't texted, hadn't called. That wasn't like him. We talked every day about nothing, about everything. I came home to find my door unlocked. My heart stopped. I always locked it. Always. I pushed it open slowly, listening. Silence, but wrong silence, the kind that means someone was just there. My apartment felt different, like the air had been disturbed. I checked the closet with shaking hands. The gun was still there, but someone had moved the coats. I could tell. They were pushed aside differently, hanging wrong. Someone had looked. Someone had found it. Wednesday, the news showed her face. Melissa Moore, 23, found dead in her apartment 3 blocks from mine. Shot once in the chest. The reporter said police were looking for witnesses for anyone who saw anything Sunday night. My stomach turned to ice. Sunday night, 2 days before Daryl brought me the gun. I grabbed my phone and called him. It rang and rang and rang. No answer. I called again and again. By the 5th try, my hands were so sweaty I almost dropped the phone. Finally, a text came back. "Can't talk. Don't call me." That's when the fear really started. It crawled up my spine like cold fingers. I looked at the closet door. The gun was in there. The gun that maybe, possibly, probably killed Melissa Moore. And it was in my apartment with my fingerprints on it. In my closet. In my home. I couldn't breathe right. Thursday morning, 2 detectives knocked on my door. "Danny Morrison, we're investigating a homicide in the area. We're talking to everyone in the neighborhood." The older one, Detective Pierce, had gray hair and tired eyes. The younger one, Detective Lee, watched me like a hawk watching a mouse. "Of course," I said, my voice somehow steady, even though my heart was trying to punch through my ribs. "I want to help." They asked where I was Sunday night. I told them, home alone, watching TV. They asked if I knew Melissa Moore. I said no, which was true. They asked if I owned a gun. I said no. The lie sat in my throat like broken glass. Detective Lee wrote something in his notebook, his pen scratching loud in the quiet. They thanked me and left. The moment the door closed, I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I had lied to the police about a murder weapon in my possession. I could go to prison, even though I didn't kill her, even though I didn't know. The gun was here. My fingerprints were on it. How could I explain that? My friend gave it to me? They'd ask why. I'd have no answer. Daryl would deny it. I'd look guilty. I'd look like a murderer. Friday, I decided to get rid of it. I waited until 2 a.m., wrapped the gun in plastic bags, and drove to the river 40 minutes outside town. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Every pair of headlights behind me felt like police. Every red light felt like a trap. The river bank was empty and dark. I walked down to the water's edge, my shoes sinking in mud. I pulled out the bundle. This was it. Throw it in. Let it sink. Let this nightmare end. But then I thought, what if someone saw me? What if there are cameras? What if they dredge the river and find it and trace it back to me somehow? What if getting rid of evidence makes me look more guilty? I stood there for 20 minutes, frozen, the gun heavy in my hands. I drove home with it still in my car. Saturday, Daryl finally called. "I need it back," he said. His voice sounded hollow, empty. "Daryl, did you..." I couldn't even say it. "That girl, Melissa Moore. Did you... meet me at the old parking garage on 5th, tonight. 11. Come alone." He hung up. I sat staring at my phone. This was it. This was the moment. I could call the police right now, turn in the gun, Tell them everything. Maybe they'd believe me. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe I'd spend years in prison for trying to help a friend. Or I could meet him, hear his explanation. Maybe there was one. Maybe this was all wrong. Maybe he'd found the gun somewhere. Maybe I was lying to myself. At 10:45, I parked on the third level of the garage. Empty cars sat in shadows. Fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered. I held the gun wrapped in the towel, waiting. Daryl appeared at 11:03. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in a week. His eyes were red and wild. "Give it to me," he said. "What did you do?" My voice cracked. "Danny, please, just give it to me." "Did you kill her? Did you kill Melissa Moore?" "It was an accident." The words exploded out of him. She was going to ruin everything. She was going to tell everyone about... He stopped. His face crumbled. "It wasn't supposed to happen. We were just talking. She got scared. She tried to grab her phone. I just wanted her to listen. I didn't mean..." The confession hung in the air between us like poison. My best friend was a murderer, and I was holding the gun that killed her. "Turn yourself in," I whispered. "Daryl, you have to." "No." He lunged forward. "Not for the gun. For me." His hands wrapped around my throat before I could react. "I can't go to prison, Danny. I can't." We fell backward. My head cracked against concrete. Stars exploded in my vision. His thumbs pressed into my windpipe. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This was Daryl, my friend, 14 years, and he was killing me. The gun was still in my hand, wrapped in the towel. I didn't think. I just moved. The towel fell away. Metal pressed against his stomach. His eyes went wide. "Let go," I gasped. "Let go, or I swear." He squeezed harder. Darkness crept in at the edges of my vision. My finger found the trigger. Time stopped. His face above mine, his hands on my throat, the pressure building in my head, the certainty that if I passed out, I'd never wake up. I screamed and pushed him off. He stumbled back. I rolled away, gasping, the gun pointed at him. "Danny," he said, "get back!" I was crying, shaking so hard I could barely hold the weapon. "Stay away from me." He took a step forward. "I mean it, Daryl. I will shoot you. I don't want to, but I will." Something in my voice stopped him. He stared at me, then at the gun. Then his face changed, crumpled. He sank to his knees. "I can't go to prison," he sobbed. "I can't. My mom, my sister, it'll destroy them." "You should have thought of that before you killed someone," I said, my voice breaking. I called 911 with one hand, the gun trained on him with the other. The police arrived in 4 minutes. Detective Pierce came with them. He looked at me, at Daryl on his knees, at the gun in my shaking hand, at the red marks on my throat. "Son," he said gently, "put the gun down, nice and slow." I did. My legs gave out, and I collapsed against a concrete pillar. They put Daryl in handcuffs. He didn't resist, didn't look at me. The gun went into an evidence bag. Detective Pierce sat next to me. "You did the right thing," he said. "I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did." I told them everything, the whole story. They recorded it, asked questions, checked the marks on my neck, took photos. Daryl confessed to everything once they had the gun, matched the ballistics, matched his fingerprints, Melissa Moore's murder, his attempt to kill me. The trial took 8 months. I had to testify, had to look at Daryl across the courtroom and tell everyone what happened. His family cried. Melissa Moore's family cried. I cried. He got 25 years to life. I'm State Trooper Clifford Foster, and I found something in Alburn that the government doesn't want anyone to know about. 3 nights ago, I was chasing a stolen pickup truck down Route 9. The driver was doing 90 in a 45. I had my lights flashing, sirens screaming. He wouldn't stop. Then his truck hit a pothole and the back door flew open. A cage fell out, crashed onto the road. Metal bent, the door popped open. Something crawled out. At first, I thought it was a kid. Small, moving weird, but when my headlights hit it, I slammed my brakes so hard I smelled rubber burning. It was a monkey. No, not a monkey. An orangutan. A baby orangutan. right there on a Kansas highway. The truck didn't stop. It kept going, disappearing into the darkness. The orangutan sat in the middle of the road, bleeding from its arm. It looked at me with eyes that seemed too human, too scared. I got out slowly. The animal didn't run. It just sat there, shaking. I called it in. Dispatch, I need animal control at mile marker 47 on Route 9. I have an injured orangutan. Silence on the other end. Then, say again. An orangutan. A baby orangutan. It fell out of a stolen truck. More silence. Stay there. Don't touch it. We're sending someone. I waited. The orangutan kept staring at me, making small sounds, crying sounds. 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up. No markings. No lights. A man in a suit got out. Not animal control. Not wildlife services. I'll take it from here, Officer Foster. Who are you? He showed me a badge. Federal Wildlife Service. This is part of an ongoing investigation. I need you to forget you saw this. Forget. That truck is still out there. We need to find it. We'll handle it. Go back to your patrol. Something felt wrong, but he was federal. I had to let him take the animal. I drove away, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. A baby orangutan in Kansas, in a stolen truck. That wasn't normal. So I did something stupid. I ran the plate number. The truck was registered to Henry Peterson, local farmer, rich guy, owned 300 acres outside town. I should have left it alone. Should have listened to that federal agent, but I didn't. The next night, I drove past Peterson's farm. Just to look. Just to see. That's when I heard the sounds. Roaring. Screaming. Animals that didn't belong anywhere near Kansas. Peterson's house was dark, but the barn behind his property was lit up like a stadium. Light poured through every crack. I approached slowly. The sounds got louder. Desperate sounds. Scared sounds. I pushed open the barn door and my brain couldn't understand what I was seeing. Cages. Dozens of cages. And inside them were animals I'd only seen in zoos. A snow leopard paced in a cage barely big enough to turn around. Its white fur was dirty and matted. A scarlet macaw sat silent in another cage, feathers plucked out from stress. In the corner, a baby gorilla pressed its face against the bars, making sounds that broke my heart. There were more. So many more. A Philippine eagle with a broken wing, 3 pangolins curled into balls, a poison dart frog in a tiny glass box, a pair of red pandas huddled together shaking. These weren't just exotic animals. These were endangered species. Illegal to own, illegal to sell. Some of them were nearly extinct. I grabbed my radio. I need wildlife services and federal agents at the Peterson farm immediately. That's when I heard voices outside, car doors slamming, lots of them. I hid behind a stack of hay bales and watched through a crack. 15 cars pulled up, expensive cars, Mercedes, BMW, Range Rovers. People got out wearing suits and dresses. They looked like they were going to a fancy dinner. Peterson walked in first, now wearing a tuxedo. He smiled big. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to tonight's private collection viewing. My stomach dropped. This was an auction. A woman in a red dress clapped her hands. Henry, you've outdone yourself. Is that a snow leopard? From Mongolia, Peterson said proudly. Took me 6 months to arrange transport, only 400 left in the wild. This beauty is one of a kind. They walked between the cages like they were shopping for furniture, pointing, discussing. Some took pictures. A fat man in a cowboy hat stopped at the baby gorilla's cage. How much for this one? Mountain gorilla from Rwanda. 85,000. Cash only. The man pulled out his phone. Wire transfer work? Of course. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These people were millionaires, respected members of the community. I recognized the mayor's wife, the bank president, the owner of the car dealership. Peterson clapped his hands. Let's begin the auction. First up, we have a breeding pair of red pandas from Nepal. Starting bid is $60,000. Hands shot up, people shouting numbers like it was a game. I had to stop this, but I was one person against 15 of them. I needed to wait for backup. Then I saw the back room door open. 2 men wheeled out a large cage covered with a tarp. Peterson's voice dropped. And now, our special item of the evening. He pulled off the tarp. Inside was a Sumatran orangutan, a mother holding a baby. They clung to each other, terrified. The crowd gasped. "There are less than 14,000 of these left on Earth," Peterson said. "This mother and baby were captured in Indonesia last month. Starting bid is $200,000. The mother orangutan looked directly at me. Her eyes were so human, so scared. She was begging me to help. I couldn't wait anymore. I stood up, gun drawn. "State police!" Nobody move. The room exploded. People screaming, running for doors. Peterson dove behind a cage. I fired a warning shot at the ceiling. I said freeze, but they didn't stop. They scattered like cockroaches. That's when Peterson did something I'll never forget. He started opening cages. If I can't have them, nobody can. The snow leopard burst out first. It was confused, scared. It ran toward the crowd and people panicked. More screaming. Chaos. The scarlet macaw flew out, smashing into a window. The pangolins scattered across the floor. People stepped on them, trying to escape. The baby gorilla stumbled out of its cage, crying for its mother who wasn't there. I tried to grab animals, to protect them, but everything was happening too fast. The mother orangutan clutched her baby and climbed up into the barn rafters. She looked down at the madness below, protecting her child. Peterson ran for his truck. I chased him. He jumped in and tried to start it, but I yanked open the door and pulled him out. We fought in the dirt. He was stronger than he looked. He punched me in the jaw. I tasted blood. That's when the sirens arrived. Federal agents, wildlife officers, finally. They swarmed the property, caught the people trying to escape, tranquilized the scared animals, secured the scene, but the damage was done. The snow leopard ran into the woods. We never found it. In Kansas winter, it probably died within days. 3 pangolins were crushed in the panic. The Philippine eagle broke its other wing trying to fly and had to be euthanized. The baby gorilla died of a heart attack from stress. It was only 2 years old. We arrested 14 people that night. Rich people, important people. Peterson cracked during interrogation. He gave us everything. This wasn't his first auction. He'd been doing this for 7 years. He had connections all over the world. Poachers in Africa, smugglers in Asia, corrupt officials who looked the other way. He'd sold over 300 endangered animals to wealthy collectors. Private zoos, people who wanted to own something rare, something nobody else had. We traced the sales, found animals in basement cages in mansions, in hidden rooms behind bookcases, in climate-controlled bunkers. We rescued 109 animals, but most were too sick to survive. Too traumatized, too damaged. The mother orangutan and her baby were the lucky ones. They went to a sanctuary in Florida. I got an update last month. They're doing okay. Still scared, but alive. Peterson got 30 years in prison. The buyers got fines and community service. Rich people justice. But here's what keeps me up at night. We found Peterson's records. In 7 years, he'd captured or bought 673 endangered animals. We only recovered 109. That means 564 animals are still out there. In private collections, suffering in cages, hidden away where nobody will find them. Some of those species might go extinct because of what Peterson did. The last of their kind, locked in some rich person's secret room, dying alone. Last week I got a call from a wildlife officer. They found a dead snow leopard in the woods near Alburn. It had starved to death. Its paws were bloody from trying to dig through frozen ground for food. It was trying to survive in a place it didn't belong, a place it should never have been. I drive past the Peterson farm sometimes. It's empty now. The barn burned down mysteriously. People say it was protesters. I think it was Peterson's buyers, destroying evidence. But on quiet nights when the wind is right, I swear I can still hear them. The animals crying out from inside those cages, begging someone to set them free. I'm Shania Tillman. People know me as the writer who created Whispers in the Rain, the book that sold millions of copies. They see me on stage, smiling at book signings. They don't know that every word I wrote came from a place so dark. Mom died on a Tuesday. I was 7 years old, and I remember the hospital smell. That sharp, clean smell that can't hide death underneath. Dad didn't cry at the funeral. He just stared at the coffin with empty eyes, and I knew right then that I'd lost both my parents that day. 6 months later, he brought her home. Linda, my stepmother. She had thin lips that never smiled and eyes like dirty ice. She moved into our house with 2 suitcases and a mean streak wider than the highway. "This is your new mother," Dad said, his words slurring together. The bottle in his hand was already half empty, and it was only noon. I wanted to scream that she wasn't my mother, that nobody could replace Mom. But I stayed quiet because Dad's eyes had changed. They were dangerous now, like a dog that might bite. That first night, Linda made dinner, burnt chicken and watery potatoes. I pushed the food around my plate, my stomach tight with fear. "Eat it," she hissed, leaning close. Her breath smelled like cigarettes and something rotten. "Or you'll wear it." I looked at Dad, waiting for him to protect me. He was slumped in his chair, the bottle pressed against his chest like a baby. He didn't even look up. I ate every bite. It tasted like ashes. The fights started small. Linda would yell at Dad about money. Dad would yell back about respect. Then the yelling would turn into crashes. Plates hitting walls, chairs kicked over, doors slammed so hard the whole house shook. I learned to make myself invisible. I'd hide in my closet, curled up between old shoes and winter coats, pressing my hands over my ears. But I could still hear everything. The screaming, the breaking, the sounds of fists hitting flesh. Sometimes Dad would remember I existed. He'd stumble into my room at night, smelling like whiskey and regret. "Your mother," he'd sob, grabbing my shoulders too tight. "She left us. Why did she leave us?" His fingers would dig into my skin, leaving purple marks that looked like storm clouds. I'd hold perfectly still, barely breathing, waiting for him to let go, waiting for him to remember I was just a kid. Linda was worse when he wasn't looking. She'd grab my hair and drag me to the mirror. "Look at you," she'd spit. "Useless, just like your dead mother." She'd lock me in the basement when I came home late from school. The basement was dark and cold, full of spiders and the scratching sounds of rats in the walls. I'd sit on the concrete floor for hours, my teeth chattering, counting to 1,000 over and over just to keep from losing my mind. Once I wet myself down there. I was only 8 years old, and I'd been locked up for so long I couldn't hold it anymore. When Linda finally let me out, she saw what happened and smiled, actually smiled. "Clean it up," she said, "and then clean yourself. You're disgusting." I scrubbed that basement floor with my bare hands, crying so hard I couldn't see. My fingers were raw and bleeding by the time I finished. We had no money. Dad lost his job at the factory after showing up drunk too many times. Linda worked at a gas station, but she spent most of her paycheck on cigarettes and cheap vodka for Dad. I wore the same 3 outfits to school, rotating them until the fabric fell apart. Kids laughed at the holes in my shoes and the stains on my shirts. Teachers looked at me with pity, but never asked questions. Nobody wanted to know what happened behind closed doors. I was hungry all the time. That deep, painful hunger that makes your stomach eat itself. Linda would cook food for her and Dad, but there was never enough for me. "You want to eat?" she'd say, holding a plate of pasta just out of reach. "Beg for it." I'd beg. On my knees, hands clasped like prayer. Anything to stop the pain in my belly. Sometimes she'd give me the food. Sometimes she'd laugh and throw it in the trash instead, making me watch as she covered it with coffee grounds and cigarette butts so I couldn't dig it out later. At school, I'd steal food from other kids' lunches. Apple slices, half-eaten sandwiches, anything. The shame burned worse than the hunger, but I did it anyway. I had to survive. The worst night came just before my 10th birthday. Dad and Linda had been fighting for hours. Their screaming filled the house like poison gas. I heard glass breaking. Heard Linda shriek something about Dad being worthless. Heard Dad roar back like a wounded animal. then silence. That silence was worse than the noise. I crept out of my closet, my heart hammering against my ribs. Linda was standing at the top of the stairs. Her face was twisted with rage, and she had a kitchen knife in her hand. "This is your fault," she whispered, looking straight at me. "Everything was fine until you." She started walking toward me. Each step was slow and careful, like a cat stalking a mouse. The knife gleamed under the hallway light. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Terror locked my muscles tight, and I absolutely knew that she was going to kill me, that nobody would stop her, that this was how my story ended. "Linda!" Dad's voice boomed from downstairs. "Where's my goddamn bottle?" She stopped, blinked. The madness in her eyes flickered like a candle in wind. Then she turned and walked away, taking the knife with her. I stood there shaking for a long time after she left. When I finally moved, I ran to the bathroom and threw up until nothing came out but air and spit. That night, I made a decision. I would survive this. No matter what it took, I would live long enough to escape. I started keeping a notebook, a small, spiral-bound thing I'd found in a dumpster behind school. I wrote down everything. Every moment of pain, every drop of fear, every second of suffering. Writing was the only thing that made me feel real. Like I mattered. I wrote "In That Closet" by flashlight while Dad and Linda destroyed each other downstairs. I wrote about hunger and bruises and basement rats. I wrote until my hand cramped and my eyes burned. The words saved me. They gave me something to hold on to when everything else was falling apart. I ran away when I was 14. Packed a backpack with my notebooks, 2 pairs of underwear, and a stolen box of crackers. I walked out the front door while Dad was passed out and Linda was at work. I never went back.